Hello, and welcome back to the cabin. We're rereading Book 1. This canoe is heavy, and we are on the last few chapters. We ended on chapter 8, and I'm just going to reread the last 2 pages to take us into the final part of the book. We have our country food here with us, some fresh smoked salmon, trout. We've got a couple kinds of rose hips, very good for tea. We've got dried moose meat and deer jerky, cranberries, currants, yams, mushrooms, some herbs, fruit and squash, and bundles of sage. Just a little display of some of the things that we talk about in the books. And of course, hot cups of tea. So this will be the last reading for Book 1. The day has come for our canoe trip across the lake and beyond. 4 of us out on an adventure. 3 teens and me ready to set off. They'll do most of the rowing and portaging the canoes along the trail. They already know what it takes to thrive along the trail, and they're eager to take their old grandmother back to her childhood village. We'll camp at the old village for a few nights, forage along the way, and do a bit of hunting, mainly rabbits and grouse, and a few trout from the lake. It will be good for all of us, hone our rough bush skills, and sleep out under the stars. The water is smooth as the sun comes up. A few villagers wave from shore as we head northwest with the sun on our backs. The canoe is loaded, pulling a small kayak, and the boys will take turns on the kayak, either paddling or being pulled. Maybe catch some fish while we cross the lake. We skirt the shore west for a while until we started heading more north and into open water. The wind is low and we paddle hard before the waves come up. This canoe is heavy and sits low in the water. We keep paddling. My young grandson brings in 4 trout, and we have food now for our first night. We come on shore and pull up the canoe. An inviting meadow greets us with an ancient fire ring that we use with respect. The first night under the stars saw us off to sleep with full stomachs and happy thoughts of the trail ahead. The morning comes early, as it usually does, and we wake to the smell of smoke and fish and a pot of tea. My oldest grandson is up, fished and cooking on the fire, and gathered herbs for tea. They're excited for the day ahead. It's important they know that there is no hurry. Enjoy the journey, unless the weather turns and we need shelter. Always be ready to change your plans and adjust to the weather. But for now, the trail ahead is calling, and we pack up the canoe and the kayak, and they go on strong shoulders for the portage. We each have a heavy pack with provisions and comforts like pots and pans and wooden and tin cups for tea, with a bit of dry meat and smoked fish in case we don't get any fresh fish. And the trail is welcoming and wide, with foraging along the way to feed us all for days. This pack is heavy, and I feel my age. It's been too long since I've walked a long trail with a heavy pack, and the memories make the pack seem lighter. We talk and laugh and sing all along the trail. That way we don't surprise a grumpy old bear or some other animal that wants to get off the trail. This well-traveled trail has many animal tracks and well-eaten hedgerow. We reach a small lake and we load the canoe. I ask to kayak while they paddle the canoe. They all nod and we glide across the small lake. A couple loons cry out and it signals that winter will soon be here. We reach the shore and pull the canoe up with the kayak and we see the old village. Many cabins are still standing in the meadow. Old trails leading into the forest and old fire rings for cooking outside. Wild flowers and berries are everywhere, and we're all filled with happiness. The spirits have left a great energy, and nature fills in the gap with abundance. We feel welcome and begin to find a sturdy cabin or two to stay in while we're here. The cabin my father built looked aged but sturdy, and the roof is intact. A tree had fallen next to the cabin and will be cut up for firewood. It feels like coming home, and we soon have the dust cleaned out and the bunks set up. This will be home for the next few days and nights. The boys are cooking fish on the outside fire, and I just let the fireplace inside to warm the food. We'll be warm inside tonight. We sat by the fire for a while and talked about the days ahead, hunting grouse, setting snares for rabbits, fishing and foraging, just as we always do and always have. The same things need to be done no matter where you are. Hello, Jade, chirping to me. No matter where you are, it's daily life, and for a few days we will live a small village life, population 4. As the night fell, we went into the cabin. It was dark and warm with only the light from the fireplace. The boys were eager for a story from a time long ago, when this village was alive and thriving, and children were born all throughout the year. The hunters were experienced and their aim was true, meat for all in the village. Fishermen that went out on kayaks and risked their lives to bring in the catch. Foragers that disturbed bears and sang their way out. A risky life with great rewards. Everyone took care of each other, just as we still do. The boys were a bit surprised that life was much the same when I was a child. But now they understand how ways are passed down and sometimes remain the same for long periods of time. Not long after we fall asleep, the drumming begins. We slowly wake up and look at each other. I stoke the fire and return to my bunk. Through a crack in the door, I see the fire outside and the flames are high. Slightly cracking the door open, we all have a peek outside. Spirits are sitting around the fire and singing to the drumming. It fades in and out like a fog, but the drum keeps rhythm. Still keep drumming. It's our ancestors, nothing to be afraid of. We've brought life back to the village, and they have a reason to show themselves to us. That way we know and remember. The boys sit by the door for a bit, then we all go back to our bunks. The drumming went on for most of the night and lulled us all to sleep. When the morning came, we were all well rested and excited to be living in our own stories on the trail. Hot coals still smoking and the boys eager to catch a few trout for the first meal. I've wandered off to peel a bit of birch bark off the trees for baskets. So many wild herbs unpicked for ages. I'll bring some back for the elders and for cooking. Plenty of garlic and onions, thistle, burdock, golden seal, to mention a few. Sweetgrasses and sage I'll roll into bundles and bring back as gifts for the elders. And small birch bark canoes for the little ones, and baskets for all. A little farther into the forest, and all those memories come flooding back. To the little child who loves nature and her village and its people. They're all gone now, just me and those memories. That's why I tell the youngers a story every chance I get, and they listen with enthusiasm. And they tell the stories with great care and retell them with details and start with in great-grandmother's life or in grandmother or grandfather's life, etc. And who doesn't like a story that starts with when grandmother was young or in the old days? Now these young men will return with stories about going to grandmother's ancient village. I say young men, they have earned it, not boys, young men. And long after I'm gone, they'll tell of our adventure. They will take their own paths, and some of them will be led right back here and revive this beautiful village, bring up children, and help elders through old age and beyond. And the old village will live again. Some of the cabins will need new roofs and walls, and some are beyond repair. A few cabins are in good faith and livable. I imagine I hear the children's laughter and their mothers' chatter. Men returning with meat from the hunt, and the old smoker will be full of meat and fish. A good life is waiting right here, and my grandsons could make it happen. I drop a few hints here and there, and I hear them imagining what it would be like to go off on their own, across the lake and beyond. Oh, almost old enough to have wives, old enough to live and thrive and survive on the edge of the forest, on the lake, and not too far from the ocean. It's not uncommon for the villages to have families leave and build not too far away, especially young couples wanting privacy, near enough to have help when needed, and help with childbirthing, but far enough to make your own way. Cousins will be close and come to visit often, share in hunting and fishing and raising of family. And the little village will grow, as some of the elders will also join them. After all, you need us elders to keep the stories alive and to keep you all respectful, not allowing bad behavior to go unchecked. Because even freedom has rules, like self-respect and mutual respect, self-control, think before speaking, and harmony with nature and humans too. And young people keep old people feeling useful, especially when they want to hear the stories. Tell us again, they say. And I tell the stories with a new story here and there to let them know adventures are still happening to me and that I'm still here. And not all stories are ancient. Sometimes we embellish with crazy notions, and the youngsters correct me, and I love it. It means they were listening and remember all the details. Details are important. It's what gives the story flavor and reality. I've wandered off into the forest, la forêt, and the sun is high and my stomach is rumbling. I'll wander back towards Father's cabin. They're watching for me as I come out of the forest with my arms full of goodies. We were not worried about you, they call out as I neared, but I could tell they were relieved that I was back with them. A great feast of trout over the fire, a rabbit in the pot with some fresh herbs, and then I added a few as well. These 3 young men are good at feeding our little tribe. My grandsons have learned well and honed their skills. I swell with pride, but I don't express it. Don't feed the ego. Feed the person, the being. A person that lets their ego run their life is not really a happy person, hiding behind self-entitlement and hiding behind lies. The ego eventually kills the soul and affects all who are around. But if you can kill the ego and allow yourself to come back to reality, then you will be okay. Being wrong and admitting a mistake shows maturity and understanding. You grow as a person for the better. Others will follow your example, and then there is more harmony, and self-respect and self-control grows. Lead by example, and when you have an off day or say something stupid or foolish, just say you're sorry so that life can go on. Pride before the fall, as the old saying goes. It's not a weakness to be humble. We know that we all make mistakes. It's how we handle them that shows the kind of person that we are. Know that youngsters and your children are always watching. Be at your best, but be yourself too. The time around the fire and the good country food makes us a bit lazy, and some of us fall into a nap right there in the meadow with herbs and flowers all around, the smells and colors and buzzings of pollinators and the warmth of the autumn sun. It's days like this that I just want to see my son's face. see him smile, hear his voice, feel his hugs. He went into the forest a long time ago and never came out. Some say he lives in the hills and doesn't want to be around people. We don't want to think a great bear might have got him. It's easy to think that he became a big old bush bear. It's hard to think that he's out there somewhere, but won't come back to his people. Maybe something in his head doesn't work right anymore. One of his sons is here with me. He doesn't ask about his father anymore. So as not to upset me into sadness. And somehow it's understood that sometimes people leave and don't come back. We hear their names when stories are told. We remember them with love and kindness, and always in the back of our thoughts, a glimmer of hope that someday they'll come home, return to us. But in the meantime, life goes on, and we live in the here and now, and my tears are wiped away. I set the sadness aside and find happiness with those who love me. And those who love you. This adventure has been a great time for reflection and fun. It's late in the day, a hot day, and suddenly these three young men were boys again, jumping and splashing in the creek. The laughter is contagious and fills me with joy. Oh, to be young again. Another day in the little village as we head back to camp and get the fire going. I hear one of my grandsons say, he's going to fix up the cabin just there and come back in the winter to see what it's like. And the others agree and say they'll come too. They've already put some of their spirit here. There's a list of berries here, things you can use them for. Tomorrow will be a busy day of building a smoker and catching fish to fill that smoker. I'll be making birch bark baskets for dry herbs and smoked fish to bring back to the village, so they know we were thinking of them. I went to my bunk early. I wanted to give my grandsons some time together around the fire, and I was exhausted. I could almost hear the drums as I faded close to sleep, and bits of laughter around the fire put a smile on my face and sent me into a restful place. Life is good, and I've been blessed. The morning came early, as it always does, bright and sunny, and the smell of fish on the fire. Thoughtful grandsons are so good to me. When someone cares for you and sees your needs, it's a blessing. It's love. We get right to work after the breakfast fish first meal. Catching fish, gutting and filleting the fish for hanging in the smoker while I make some baskets. And here comes my youngest grandson, Little Hawk to come foraging with me. He has great eyes and he has a good heart, and that's why I call him my Little Hawk. He has a solid mind and is always watching and thinking, not saying much, but when he does speak, he knows what he's talking about. It will be a few years yet before he goes off on his own to test himself and return a man. So for now, we enjoy each other's company and learn from each other. He doesn't have siblings, but he has cousins, and that's just as good. They'll learn from each other and look out for each other like brothers. The smoker is finished and fish are being hung. A slow, smoky burn. Smoke from alder wood will give the fish a soft flavor, but don't over smoke or it will be bitter. It's a small tepee-style smoker covered with pine boughs. It will smoke for many hours and will be our first preserved and stored food at the little village. What we don't eat will come back with us across the lake and beyond to the big village. And just then we hear a sharp scream, and Little Hawk takes off into the forest and the thick brush. He comes back minutes later holding a rabbit by the ears. The snare helped us with food before sleep. Rabbit over the fire and fish smoking. We've settled in nicely. And fresh greens. Plantain and purslane are everywhere this time of year. And healthy for eating too. 2 large baskets full of smoked dry fish, trout, where most were gutted and smoked whole with tail and head still on. No waste that way. And a few thin sliced fish leather like jerky turned out good. A pot of fish soup bubbles over the fire, and my grandsons are busy carving large spoons for the soup. I remind them it's not a race, and the soup needs a bit on the fire. As I move the pot to the side a little bit. We can see some young deer on the tree line. Soon we will hunt for moose and deer to feed the village for the winter. Smokers all through the village will be full with fish and meat. Wild wheat will be ground down for flour and bannock and cooked over the fire with currants and rendered fat. All that and more is waiting back at the big village, and soon we'll be there getting ready for winter too, helping each other with food and wood for heat and cooking. Our little adventure will soon take us back home with many stories to tell. We stayed a few extra days and nights. It was hard to leave. The poplar and the birch along the mountain valley have began to turn orange and yellow. Autumn is on its way with cool nights and foggy mornings. This canoe is heavy and sits low in the water, laden with gifts of food, herbs, sage, baskets of smoked fish. I helped carry the canoe on our first portage, while some supply and baskets are left behind. We'll have to make a few trips on the trail till we can load up the canoe again. We sleep under the stars that night and laugh until we fall asleep. We pick up the canoe and kayak and come to the water's edge. We will cross the lake today, even though this canoe is heavy. We load up and head across the lake, skirting the shore for a bit, then into the headwind and waves. We hear cheers and whoops from the shore as we come near. It feels good to be missed. These three excited young men, left as boys and returned much older. We begin to offer baskets of food and herbs to the settlement village. It's already late in the day, and all I can think of is a hot cup of tea and my comfy bunk. The stories flowed long into the night. Not only our adventure stories, but also stories of what happened in the village while we were away. Funny stories and happy stories. Sage bundles smoked and we washed away any bad thoughts or spirits. Thanks that we had made it back safe and that the spirits didn't take us. It didn't take long and we were right back into village life and dreaming and planning our next adventure in the spring. For now it's time to hunt, fill the meat stores, because winter brings its own challenges and rewards. And there will be adventures in the snow and on the ice. Ice fishing, following tracks in the snow, setting snares and trap lines, checking old bear dens to see that they're sleeping, and all the winter birds and their songs. We get to know each seasonal type of bird and their singing and chirping. It's all a happy circle of life. I'll spend most of the winter inside where it's warm, keeping the little ones busy, well fed, and warm. There's always winter chores. Outside, it's wood and trapping, fishing, hunting, but mostly gathering wood, chopping, stacking for warmth and cooking and ceremony. Inside, it's busy with small children. Love my grandchildren. There's cooking to be done, usually a pot or two warmed near the fire with fish soup or warm meat. Cleaning is daily and done by all. Stitching and sewing hides and making clothes and moccasins. When you get a bunch of women and children together, there's lots of laughter, lessons, and love. We bundle up the littles and get them outside for some fresh air and to play in the snow. Like little bears, they waddle and stumble around in their fur hats and coats and mukluks. The village in winter is magical, with snow hanging from the roof edges of the cabins. The center wigwam looks like a long igloo and lights up at night from the fire inside. Long winter sleeps have me dreaming of spring and another adventure across the lake and beyond. And that's the end of book 1. This canoe is heavy. Book 2 is already online, but I'll also be doing a long read version of the next 2 books, doing a half a book at a time. I hope you enjoy these stories as much as I do. Tell me some of your stories in the comments section below. And like and subscribe and ring the bell and share. It keeps the stories coming. And once in a while, I might read one of these stories online, and it might be your story. Everything you do helps to grow this little channel and keeps the stories coming. Remember to be kind to nature and to go into the forest as often as you can. Thanks for joining me for tea and some country foods and the reading of Book 1, This Canoe is Heavy. I'll have hot tea ready for Book 2 in the days to come. Thank you.